The part of the pumpkin most people throw away is the part traditionally used against intestinal worms, not the orange flesh, the seeds. And one simple step may determine how much of the seed your body can actually access. Pumpkin seeds have shown antiparasitic activity in laboratory and animal research, but swallowing them whole, roasting them heavily, or drowning them in oil changes the recipe completely. The traditional idea is simple. Expose the inside of the seed, combine it with a fiber-rich food, and let the digestive system do the rest. But here is the warning almost no parasite cleanse video gives you. Not everything that looks like a worm in the toilet is a worm. In this video, I will show you the pumpkin seed trick, the correct way to prepare it, what the research actually found, and the mistake that makes people believe diarrhea means the parasites are gone. The secret is inside the seed. The proof is never inside a viral promise. Let me introduce you to Margaret. Margaret is 67, from Arizona. She is a fictional composite representing a pattern I have seen enough times that it deserves its own explanation. Margaret has been experiencing bloating for months. She alternates between constipation and loose stools. She has watched several parasite cleanse videos and has become convinced that most of her digestive symptoms are being caused by worms she cannot see and has never diagnosed. She found a recipe online: seeds, pumpkin, oil. She decided that if a little was good, more must be better. She used a large amount of oil, added several tablespoons of seeds without grinding them, ate the preparation on an empty stomach, and spent the following day with significant diarrhea. When she examined her stool, she noticed string-like material she had never noticed before. She was convinced she had seen the worms leaving. Here is the central question of her story. Did the recipe remove parasites, or did it simply change what her stool looked like? Margaret thought anything unusual in the toilet was proof. Her digestive tract was telling a more complicated story. The recipe changed her stool. That did not prove it removed a parasite. I will come back to that stool in detail later in this video. First, I want to give you the reason this recipe exists at all. Because the traditional foundation is real and it deserves to be understood before we discuss its limits. The use of pumpkin seeds against intestinal worms has appeared in traditional medicine systems across cultures and centuries. In various parts of Latin America, Africa, Eastern Europe, and Asia, families used preparations from cucurbita species, pumpkin, squash, to address intestinal parasites. The preparations varied: ground seeds mixed with water, decoctions, seed pastes, combinations with other plant materials. The specific species, quantities, and preparation methods differed by region and family. Traditional use is not meaningless. It is often where scientific questions begin. A family tradition passed down through generations does not constitute clinical proof, but it constitutes a pattern of observation across many populations and many generations that motivated researchers to look more closely. Most of the plant-derived antiparasitic treatments in modern use began as exactly this kind of traditional knowledge. Now let me tell you what researchers actually found when they examined pumpkin seeds more carefully. Studies on cucurbita seed extracts, decoctions, and oils have shown anthelmintic activity, antiparasitic activity, in laboratory and animal models. Different preparations of pumpkin seeds have demonstrated the ability to affect certain helminths, the class of parasitic worms that includes roundworms, tapeworms, and related organisms. The activity is observed consistently enough across multiple study types to be taken seriously. One human study examined pumpkin seeds in the context of taniasis, tapeworm infection. In that study, pumpkin seeds were used in combination with areca nut. The treatment showed some effectiveness, but because the two ingredients were combined, the contribution of pumpkin seeds alone cannot be isolated. The areca nut itself has its own pharmacological properties and its own safety concerns. That study does not allow a clean conclusion that pumpkin seeds alone would produce the same result, and I am not recommending areca nut. A worm in a laboratory dish is not the same challenge as a parasite protected inside a living human body. The parasite in a dish has no host defenses around it, no mucus layer, no immune environment, no competition from other gut bacteria, and no variation in the concentration of what reaches it. A food-size serving delivered through normal digestion is a different situation entirely. The evidence is promising enough to investigate, not strong enough to promise that every parasite will be flushed away. If you want natural gut remedies explained without confusing tradition with proof, subscribe now. That distinction can protect both your health and your wallet. Now let me explain the difference that most parasite cleanse videos completely skip. Why the same seed in 3 different forms is not the same preparation. A raw, unsalted pumpkin seed straight from a fresh pumpkin or purchased raw. A commercially roasted salted snack seed sold in a bag. A laboratory extract prepared with specific solvents at controlled temperature and concentration, standardized for specific compounds. These 3 things come from the same plant. They are not the same preparation. Heavy roasting changes the structural composition of the seed. Salt changes its taste, but also affects how it interacts with water in the digestive tract. Industrial processing may alter the compounds that contribute to biological activity. A laboratory extract, by contrast, is prepared specifically to concentrate and standardize bioactive components at concentrations far higher than any food serving delivers. When a study shows that an extract of cucurbita seed inhibited parasite motility in a laboratory dish, that result was produced by a specific preparation at a specific concentration. Eating a tablespoon of roasted pumpkin seeds from a snack bag is not the same preparation. Raw seed, roasted snack, and laboratory extract may come from the same pumpkin, but they are not the same preparation. Grinding exposes the interior of the seed and improves how much of its content becomes accessible during digestion. The seed shell is relatively tough. Swallowing whole seeds means a portion of the seed interior may pass through the digestive tract without being fully broken down. Grinding does not create a medicine. It simply exposes more of the seed to digestion. Opening the seed is only the first step. What you mix with it determines whether this becomes a sensible food or an intestinal punishment. Let me give you the recipe I would prepare. I am calling it the pumpkin seed gut bowl. You will need 100 to 120 grams of cooked or roasted pumpkin, about the size of a small serving bowl's worth of cooked pumpkin flesh, 2 tablespoons of raw, unsalted pumpkin seeds, half of 1 small apple with the peel left on, thoroughly washed, 1 teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil, only 1 teaspoon, 1 or 2 tablespoons of water if you need to adjust the texture, and an optional small pinch of cinnamon for flavor. Preparation: cook or roast the pumpkin until it is tender. You can bake it in a standard dish, steam it, or boil it. You do not need a plastic bag, and this recipe was never designed for one. The traditional idea never depended on plastic. Use glass, ceramic, or a standard pot. Grind the pumpkin seeds immediately before using them. A small blender, a food processor, a mortar and pestle, or even a rolling pin and a bag will work. The goal is to open the seed, not to create a powder. Mash the cooked pumpkin until smooth or semi-smooth. Your preference. Grate or finely chop the half apple with its peel. Mix in the freshly ground seeds. Add 1 teaspoon of olive oil. If the texture is too thick, add water 1 tablespoon at a time. Serve this as a food in a normal meal context, not as a concentrated dose on an empty stomach. The apple peel contributes pectin and fiber. Washing it thoroughly matters. Keeping the peel is sensible if the fruit is clean and you tolerate it well. Fiber supports bowel regularity in general terms. It does not kill parasites, but it does help move material through the digestive tract, which is part of what makes this a reasonable combination. The olive oil is present in a small amount for flavor and to support absorption of fat-soluble compounds. 1 teaspoon, not 3 tablespoons, not a quarter cup. Excess oil is one of the primary reasons cleanse recipes cause the diarrhea that people then misinterpret as parasites leaving. An oily bowel movement is not proof that a parasite was killed. The flesh of the pumpkin provides water, carotenoids, some carbohydrates, and a mild flavor base. It makes the recipe palatable and nutritious. But the antiparasitic reputation in traditional medicine and the laboratory evidence is centered on the seeds, not the flesh. The flesh feeds the meal. The seed carries the antiparasitic reputation. Did your family ever use pumpkin seeds as a traditional remedy? Write only the country and the family member who taught you in the comments below. Now I need to address something that this recipe, like all food-based antiparasitic approaches, requires you to understand before we go further, because the recipe may be the same for every person who tries it. The parasite is not. There is no single food proven to remove every parasite, because parasites are not one single organism. Roundworms, Ascaris lumbricoides, infect hundreds of millions of people globally and are transmitted through contaminated soil. Pinworms, Enterobius vermicularis, cause the anal itching that is most recognized in children. Hookworms penetrate the skin of bare feet on contaminated soil. Whipworms live in the large intestine. Tapeworms, multiple species, can be acquired through undercooked meat or fish. Strongyloids stercoralis can persist in the body for decades and become dangerous in immunosuppressed individuals. Giardia and other protozoa are not worms at all. They are single-celled organisms that require different testing and different treatment. Each of these organisms may respond differently to different substances, may live in different parts of the digestive tract, may have different protective mechanisms against what the host eats, and requires different testing to identify and different treatment to address effectively. The recipe may be the same. The organism is not. Now, let me tell you what Margaret actually saw in the toilet. Because this is the section that changes how people think about cleanse results. After her preparation, heavy on oil, seeds not ground, taken on an empty stomach, Margaret experienced significant diarrhea. When she looked at the toilet, she saw string-like material she had not noticed in her stool before. She photographed it. She was convinced. Here is what that string-like material may have been. Mucus is normally present in the intestinal lining. It protects the gut wall. It is usually not visible in stool under normal circumstances. When the intestine is irritated by excessive oil, by an unfamiliar food combination, by the spasm-inducing effect of something that caused diarrhea, mucus production increases and mucus can become visible in the stool. It appears as white or clear strand-like material. The apple in Margaret's recipe contributed fiber. Pectin and plant fibers from fruits and vegetables can appear in stool as undigested strands, particularly when the digestive transit is accelerated, as it is during diarrhea. Ground pumpkin seed shells may appear as fibrous fragments. In some cases, food fibers have been photographed by people online and genuinely believed to be parasites. They are not. What looks like a worm after a cleanse may be mucus, plant fiber, or undigested food. A true parasite segment, a proglottid from a tapeworm, for example, would be a white or cream-colored flat segment, typically the size of a grain of rice, that might move. That is a different observation from a general strand of white material in loose stool. The recipe changed the stool. It did not provide a diagnosis. This matters enormously because if Margaret acts on the assumption that she saw parasites and they are gone, she may not pursue the testing that would tell her what was actually happening. And if she had a real parasitic infection that the food-based approach did not address, it would continue. Diarrhea is not proof that parasites were expelled. A purge-changing stool appearance is not a diagnostic test. Let me give you the realistic picture of when a food-based approach is not sufficient, and what testing actually looks like. A healthcare provider evaluating for parasites considers two things first. What symptoms does the person have, and what exposures make a parasite plausible? Bloating is common. It occurs with IBS, dysbiosis, food intolerance, slow motility, stress, and a dozen other conditions before a parasite is considered. Bloating alone is not a strong indicator. The question is whether the bloating is accompanied by weight loss, anemia, diarrhea with blood or mucus, visible segments, anal itching, or a history of travel to an endemic region, drinking untreated water, walking barefoot on contaminated soil, eating raw or undercooked meat or fish, or occupational exposure to soil or animals. Without risk factors, a parasite is a less likely explanation for generalized digestive symptoms. With relevant exposure history, testing becomes much more important. Stool ova and parasite testing examines a stool sample for parasite eggs, larvae, or adult forms. Multiple samples are often needed, sometimes 3 on consecutive days, because many parasites shed intermittently rather than continuously. A single negative stool test does not always close the case. Antigen or molecular tests may be used for specific organisms. Strongyloids may require serological testing in addition to stool testing, because routine stool examination frequently misses it. One negative stool test does not always close the case, but one strange object in the toilet does not prove it either. When a confirmed parasitic infection is identified, treatment is matched to the organism. Albendazole, mebendazole, praziquantel, Ivermectin and other prescription medications are used depending on the diagnosis, the life stage of the parasite, the location of infection, and any coexisting conditions. The dose and duration are specific. Self-treatment with food, however nutritious the food, is not a substitute for this precision. Food can support nutrition. Confirmed infection requires the treatment matched to the organism. Now let me give you the seeds check. This framework takes less than 2 minutes and tells you whether you are using this recipe sensibly. S is for seeds, not just flesh. The traditional antiparasitic reputation is primarily associated with the seeds. The flesh makes the recipe nutritious and palatable, but do not expect the orange part of the pumpkin alone to carry the biological reputation of the seeds. E is for expose the inside. Grinding the seeds before eating them increases digestive contact with the interior. Swallowing whole seeds reduces how much of the seed content is accessible to your digestive system. E is for evidence has levels. Traditional use, laboratory activity, animal studies, and limited human research are different categories of evidence. A food with laboratory evidence is not the same as a food with proven clinical effectiveness in humans at culinary doses. D is for diarrhea is not proof. Loose stool after a cleanse does not confirm that parasites were removed. Mucus, plant fiber, excess oil, seed fragments, and normal gut response to new foods can all change what stool looks like without indicating parasite expulsion. S is for stool test when suspicious. If you have relevant symptoms and a plausible exposure history, travel, untreated water, undercooked meat, soil contact, persistent unexplained symptoms, get tested. A stool ova and parasite examination and appropriate follow-up testing is what identifies a real infection. Now let me tell you what changed for Margaret. She showed her stool photographs to her physician. The physician recognized the material as mucus strands and plant fiber consistent with the dietary ingredients and the diarrhea her gut had experienced. A stool examination was ordered. No parasites were identified. Her symptoms, the chronic bloating, the alternating stool pattern, were evaluated more thoroughly and ultimately attributed to a combination of IBS pattern motility, dietary triggers she had not previously recognized, and a stress component that had been ongoing for over a year. She still uses the pumpkin seed recipe occasionally. She eats it as food. She does not call it a cleanse. She does not interpret loose stool as evidence of anything she has eliminated. She asked her physician a direct question about parasites based on her actual exposure history and received a direct answer. Margaret learned the difference between a nutritious recipe and a diagnosis. Pumpkin seeds may be more than an ordinary snack, but a promising food is not the same thing as a confirmed treatment. Use the seed to support the gut. Use testing to identify the enemy. Subscribe, because the next food people call a parasite killer can irritate the intestine so badly that the reaction is mistaken for a cure.